All right, Federico, we are back with our final special episode of App Stories for WWDC 2021. And today we are going to talk about a couple of different things. But first, how are you doing? How are you holding up?
I'm good. How are you holding up?
I have my ups and downs, but overall, I think I'm doing better. I'm recovering from the work hangover that we talked about at one point, but no, I'm doing really well. It's been a lot of fun this week. There have been so many things announced and a lot of tidbits that have come out. We did our big roundup of those on the site just yesterday, and then I dug into shortcuts for Mac, and I had, this is the thing about WWDC that I really enjoy is that the first day or two, there's so much information coming at you that you feel like you can barely process it all. But then at some point, you get the chance to just kind of sit and think about it a little bit, which is what I did yesterday. And so I wrote about a little bit more of a big picture story about what shortcuts on the Mac means for automation in general across all of Apple's platforms. And so that was a lot of fun because in past years, I've had stories that I've done like that either during WWDC or shortly after about things like Mac Catalyst. But this year, it was about shortcuts, and I'm unbelievably excited about shortcuts on the Mac. I can't wait to really dig into this and build some stuff and really bring all those things that I've spent years doing on my iPad or iPhone and then transferring whatever I create onto my Mac as I do things like build our newsletter, bring those straight in onto my Mac and see how it is there and having it all in one package where I don't have to kind of be using multiple devices at one time. I can choose and do everything on one device, whether that happens to be the iPad or the Mac or even the iPhone.
Yeah. So what kind of shortcuts did you try? By the way, really good, really great story.
Thank
if
you.
anyone missed it, it's on MacStories.net. It's a really good story and it encapsulates, I think you did a good job in sort of tracing the path from workflow to shortcuts, first on iOS and then on macOS. So really good story, but you mentioned you tried some shortcuts on the Mac. So I want to understand which ones. And right, I know that it's early, but what kind of shortcuts do you think you will carry over to the Mac and use on the Mac? Because I know that for a long time you've been using sort of the iPad Pro in parallel with the Mac just for shortcuts. Right. So I kind of want to know what's your plan here.
Well, I think the place I'm going to start is the stuff that I use every single week, which are some of our shortcuts for the Club MacStories newsletters. And there we have, you built shortcuts years ago now to do things like extract the app images out of Trello for the apps we're going to cover that week, and then create an app icon and then get them in the right size and upload them to MailChimp where we can drop them into the newsletter. So things like that I'm going to do. I also have, between App Stories and MacStories Unwind, I feel like I'm constantly making lists of all the articles that we wrote in a particular week. So a while back, I created a shortcut that can generate all different kinds of lists of articles for the past week. Things like markdown formatted bulleted lists or just straight up URLs or whatever it happens to be, because I need different formats for different things. So that kind of thing I used to do on my phone because it's so easy to do in shortcuts, but it's not nearly as easy to do in Automator or something like that at the Mac. So I'm going to bring that over and just use that. That's the kind of thing that I'll use 2 or 3 times a week, easy. And so I'm going to start with some of those fairly simple or most used shortcuts and then go from there, I think. This episode of App Stories and all of our WWDC coverage on App Stories and Mac Stories is brought to you by Raycast. It's time for you to say goodbye to Spotlight and say hello to Raycast. Raycast is a native Mac app that eclipses and extends Spotlight's functionality. With the press of a keyboard shortcut, Raycast launches apps and a whole lot more. You can do all sorts of things. You can schedule a Zoom meeting and join one. You can use third-party apps like Google Workspace, GitHub, Jira, Asana, and Linear. Search for files and access them, access the clipboard, set a reminder, take a quick note, control system functions on your Mac, and a whole lot more. Just the other day, Raycast launched a new WWDC extension that lets you search for session videos using Guy Rambo's app, WWDC for Mac OS. Raycast also supports quick links that lets you open files, folders, and URLs. Quick links even accept input, allowing you to use them to execute searches right from the app. Raycast recently added a snippet system too, eliminating repetitive typing. The app is extensible with scripts too. In fact, there are over 400 created by its community of users. Scripts let you control all sorts of other apps like Bear, CleanShot, Craft, and Things. You can also control Apple Music, Spotify, or even set your Slack status. Because Raycast is a native Mac app, it behaves exactly as you'd expect and is fast and responsive. It's also actively developed with a keen focus on privacy. Together, Raycast's powerful features keep you focused on what's most important to you. You avoid inefficient context switching and eliminate clutter. Download Raycast for free right now by going to raycast.com to give it a try and level up your productivity. Again, that URL is raycast.com to download Raycast for free. Our thanks to Raycast for their support of the show and our WWDC coverage.
All right, John. So I want to talk about a couple of things today that I found interesting. I've been watching a lot of sessions. I've been taking a lot of notes. Some of the notes that I've been taking today are about Safari web extensions. So web extensions are new. Obviously, these have been available on the Mac for the past year. I believe you've been able to install Safari extensions from the Mac App Store for the past year. Apple is, of course, joining the industry in supporting it's an open spec for web extensions.
Right.
These are based on standard web technologies.
Yeah, because extensions aren't new at all on the Mac. I mean, they've been around since the beginning of time. But the web extensions, that standard is Apple's new to it, and that's what really was added a year ago or so.
Right, and it was added to Safari on the Mac, where you can safely and securely install these extensions.
Yep.
They are based on JavaScript, CSS, HTML, the usual web technologies that a lot of developers are familiar with. And now the big news this year is that, as we hoped, web extensions are coming to iPhone and iPad. And I think this is a big deal because, first of all, I spend a lot of time in Safari. It's my go-to browser on both devices, in fully because I always found Safari the best browser to use in combination with shortcuts.
Yep, definitely.
For many reasons, one of them being that with shortcuts you can run JavaScript on a Safari web page, and you can also get access to the selection on a page. But this is a big deal because extensions in Safari for iPhone and iPad will unlock a ton of new functionality, and they will go beyond the limitations of the share sheet. So just to provide some context here, you will be able, it seems, to install extensions from the App Store, but just like on the Mac, you will also be able to get them from any website. It's my understanding.
Right. And I would just jump in and say one thing here too, is I think what this should do is having these on the iPhone and the iPad should help invigorate the Mac side of things too, because this was a shift when they went to web extensions at Apple, and a lot of older extensions on Safari fell by the wayside because there was a whole new process to have an extension on the Mac. You had to have a developer account in order to have a web extension, and that was a bridge too far for some people. So I think having them on iOS and iPadOS is going to help maybe bring more of those over to the Mac too, because they're built roughly the same way. There's a few limitations on iOS, but not that many really.
Yeah, there's a few restrictions compared to the Mac side of things when it comes to things like the window API. So you will not be able, if you're a developer of an extension, you will not be able to control and script windows on an iPad like you can on the Mac. And you will also not be able to have persistent background pages due to performance and memory reasons on iPhone and iPad.
Yeah. Do you have a sense for what that means to extensions, though? Like not having the persistent background page?
I think that's mostly in the case of extensions that want to run in the background all the time would be sort of the way that I understood what the limitation is.
Maybe for things like ad blockers, for instance?
For that, Apple still recommends making content blocker extensions.
Yeah, right. They have I guess that's a bad example, right?
I don't know exactly what it means, but I can tell you that I've already seen like some of the most popular web extensions announce and show that they are going to be available on iPhone and iPad.
Yeah, Grammarly for one, which I'm a big user and big fan of.
Grammarly, 1Password will be able to bring the full-on 1Password autofill pop-up to iPad. Now, there's going to be some differences, right? Because I think on some devices, like on iPad, you will see these pop-ups, like these modal small windows appear on top of Safari. And I think on iPhone, those will default to a sheet appearance. So you will not see those pop-ups on iPhone. You will see sort of this sheet cover the lower half of the screen.
Okay.
But and obviously in bringing extensions to Safari on iOS and iPadOS, there's going to be a strict permission-based system. So you will find compatible extensions in Settings, Safari extensions. Then when you enable an extension, you will also have to grant access to the extension. So there's a couple of ways that developers can go about this. It seems that if you there's a new permission system that Apple is introducing this year called the Active Tab permission, which means if your extension wants to access just the current tab, it seems like you will not be forced by the system to bring up an alert that says, I want to grant access to all of your pages. And you can just get access to the current tab in Safari. But if you're the kind of extension that wants to access all of the to all of the pages that you have open in Safari or an entire domain, for example, you will have to request permission from the user. And similarly, if you want to install one of those extensions that replace your new tab page, such as Momentum, for example, you will have to grant permission to that as well. But that means that we will also be able to change the appearance of the new tab view in Safari. And you can install any extension that replaces your new tab view or something else. It seems like it will be possible on iPhone and iPad.
Interesting. Let me ask you this. Do you know if this will allow extensions to kind of send data back to like a separate app that they run? Because I'm wondering whether if these could connect to an app on the system, whether then there could be shortcuts that would interact with these two. Like this would be like a roundabout way to getting at tab data and things like that.
So I don't think that will be possible because these are based just again on CSS and JavaScript and HTML. I don't think there's a bridge between that
and other apps.
I don't think those extensions have any idea of what you have installed on your device.
Right. But you could have something like, at least you could have something like Benjamin Mayo's Tab to Links extension that's on the Mac. That would be a handy thing to have on iOS.
I think so. I think that those extensions will be possible, provided that you request access right to the user. Because obviously there is a security concern here, obviously, which is you're granting access to your browsing session, to your Safari session, to an extension made by a third-party developer. That's no different from granting access to your photos or your contacts or your email account. So we're used to that. But this is just to say there will be a permission-based system in place. It's not like Apple is just going to throw a bunch of extensions at Safari without any sort of warning. But I'm very excited about this because it means that things like web clippers will be possible, right? Instead of using the share sheet and all the odd limitations of the share sheet, this is totally a tangent, but I think it's kind of weird how in 2021 we still have this difference between share and action extensions.
Yeah.
It sort of made sense.
It's really blurry these days too, is the thing.
It's really blurry and really comes down to the fact that action extensions, which would be the black and white ones, I really don't know how to describe them anymore, but the black and white
vertical
ones,
list.
The vertical list, those extensions, which can also be like built-in actions for an app or your shortcuts, it's all very confusing. But those extensions are the only ones that have access to the DOM, to the structure of a web page.
Oh, okay.
Whereas share extensions, I don't think they do, but it's really weird. I don't know anymore if that's still the case.
Yeah, because I don't understand. Things like Keepit can do web archives, but I don't know if that probably doesn't require.
I don't know anymore. So maybe that limitation is not in place anymore. But then, if that's the case, then what's the difference between share extensions and action extensions?
Very little.
Right. So I think, I don't know. And now with web extensions, it's going to be there's going to be a third type, basically, of extension that you can install in Safari. The thing is, though, that web extensions, they can add buttons to the Safari, what's it called now? The search bar, not the address bar anymore.
Right.
The smart search bar. What's the name?
I think it's smart. I think it's called Smart Search. Or at least the
Smart Search.
That may be what the feature's called, not the actual box. I guess it could still be the address bar. Who knows? It's this weird tab that has an address bar in it.
Right, the box. Right, so native web extensions, they can add, just like on a Mac, they can add icons and buttons to the Safari UI. So I'm really excited about this because I've been wanting to, like, one of the things that I miss from a desktop browser was the ability to extend the browser natively.
Oh, absolutely. I use it all the time on my Mac for things like saving things to read later and all sorts of different things.
Without having to go through the share sheet. That really is the thing for me, especially now that they have ruined the share sheet in Safari, in iOS. So maybe...
What's funny, though, Federico...
Maybe that's a conspiracy theory.
Well, they've neglected the share button on the Mac. The share button on the Mac has never been as powerful as on iOS, and it's like the opposite. It's like the opposite on iOS, because I was just thinking about this today when I was writing about shortcuts for the Mac, which is you can't invoke there's all these different places you can invoke a shortcut on the Mac now, but the share button is not one of them, which is really odd to me when you think about it. I mean, that on iOS, that's absolutely where you do it. That's one of the main places. I don't know. I mean, it's strange. It's very strange. I mean, of course, you can use the menu bar and all sorts of other places, so there are other ways around it. But I would have thought it would be in the share button too for things like Safari. But
have I stumbled upon an accidental conspiracy theory?
I think we have.
Have they ruined the share sheet in iOS 15 so that you're going to use web extensions more?
Yeah, maybe, because that's certainly the way it is on the Mac. It certainly is true on the Mac. I don't know. It's very strange to me. I want to ask you about web clippers, though. But how would a web clipper work on Safari for iOS if it can't interact with an app? Would you have to have a good point. A web service or something, maybe?
That's a good point, which is why I don't want to fully rule out the idea that you will be able to communicate with your native app.
Yeah.
If you are... Actually, now that I think about it, because Apple said you can package an extension with your native app on the App Store, and because 1Password showed it off, I'm going to say I think it's going to be possible for native web extensions to communicate with the host app.
Yeah, I think that has to be right. That has to be right. But I think but you would have to be a two-step process if you're doing something like shortcuts. Probably you'd have to then go to the app and do something.
Right. I don't think you will be able to. Really, what I would love to have is let me make my own web extensions with shortcuts.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So you could dump things straight into Obsidian or whatever you want to do. Yeah. Your own.
Or even a lot simpler, just let me take an existing shortcut and let me say this is a native extension, put it somewhere in the Safari toolbar.
Right, because it happens to work on web pages.
Right. Just let me take it out of the share sheet. All right. We'll see how that goes. It's all very early days. I think we saw a demo with 1Password. And hey, John, maybe I'm already working on a secret project with Finn for web extensions. Who knows?
Really?
Right? Well, maybe.
You know more about what's going on with my son than I do. I think that's a little strange, but I actually haven't talked to him in a few days, so we'll see. I'll have to ask him.
Oh, he's fine. I can tell you that.
All right, that's good. That's good. All right.
Beautiful.
All right. What else do you have for me in iOS?
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the camera, and specifically, I want to talk about this new feature called Live Text.
It's really cool. Yeah, I like this a lot.
It's really cool. I can tell you that it makes for a perfect demo when you want to, like, Sylvia asked me, so what's new in iOS 15? And I told her, like, the new do not disturb stuff, notifications.
Right.
And what did I tell her? Like, there was another thing. what was it? The custom do not disturb
FaceTime stuff or the share play?
FaceTime stuff. And then I told her, and you can do this with the camera. And I just showed it to her, and she went like, "Oh my god!" And it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So now in iOS 15, there's a new feature of the camera where you can point the camera at any text, and the camera will recognize it, and you will see this yellow rectangle in the viewfinder that tells you that some text has been found.
Right. It's very similar to like when you scan something, right?
Yes, when you scan like a QR code, for example, you see those yellow crosshairs basically on screen. And when that happens, you will also see in the lower right corner of the viewfinder a new document scan. So it looks like a document scan button.
Mm-hmm.
And when you press it, that's when the magic happens. So when you press that button in the iOS 15 camera, and by the way, I think this is only on the iPhone. I'm pretty sure that only... No, actually, no, I'm not sure, because I think in one place, this was sort of confusing, because in one place, Apple said only 2018 or newer iPhone models with the neural engine support this. And in some other places, they also mentioned iPads. This usually happens, like...
because they were thinking about the iPhone when they made the feature, but there's no reason it shouldn't also apply to the iPad, which has just as powerful a chip and a decent camera.
No, but sometimes also in WWDC sessions, the Apple engineers just say iOS, but they also mean iPadOS. I think also because they haven't gotten used to the marketing term for
what they should
iPadOS.
I don't know. They should be as careful as we are. I think about that all the time.
Well, yeah. Anyway, when you press that document icon in the camera, the frame freezes on screen, and I absolutely love this UI. So the recognized text sort of freezes and pops up, and you can just drag your finger on the text and select it as if it were any text field in the system. And you can just drag your finger over the text and select the text, or you can interact with the native copy and paste menu that appears above the text.
Does the share button come up with that?
So there's a share button that comes up with that. There's a lookup button, so you can look up information via the dictionary and all the sort of smart suggestions that lookup supports.
Right.
You can copy, so you can copy to the clipboard, but you can also do real-time translation.
Wow.
This is the new system-wide translate feature that is based on the Translate application that Apple launched last year. So this year, Translate is available on iPad as well, but also Translate is a system-wide feature. So in any text field, the Translate button will now join the copy and paste, standard actions in the menu. And so from the camera, imagine being somewhere, abroad, now that we can travel again, pointing the camera at any text, and, you can freeze the frame, and then you can immediately select that text with your finger, and you can translate with one tap. And it's incredible, and it works really well. Obviously, this is one of the... I think Apple has gotten better at really showing off what machine learning can do.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things, like live texting the camera with the ability to copy, select, share, and translate right there without ever leaving the camera. That's a great example of what the neural engine lets them do.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, to be fair, though, I think Google has done this for a very long time with its Translate app, right? And that I think the Google Translate app even will overlay the translated text on, like if it's a street sign, for instance, will overlay it in the same font roughly on the object in the real world, kind of an AR experience. But yeah, it's nice to have this native to iOS now, and the fact that you can not only just translate something so you can read it if it's not in your native language, but you can use the text and send it somewhere else.
That's right. Yeah. What I like about the Apple implementation is that it's integrated with a lot of different features throughout the system. So
the data detector stuff, right?
It supports the share sheet, and it works with data detectors. And here's where it gets interesting. So by default, Apple has this technology called the UI text content type, which is all the different kinds of text that, like all the different values that text can have on iOS. This includes things like a name or a middle name or a job title, a street address, and a postal code, all kinds of different types of text. Now, the camera with live text in iOS 15 will recognize 7 types of text. Street addresses, telephone numbers, email addresses, URLs, shipment tracking numbers, flight numbers, and a combination of date, time, and duration. So 7 types. Now, if you're a developer and you want to support this stuff, you can bring this live text functionality into your application by integrating text fields in your app as well as the keyboard. So in a few different places in iOS, you will see, if you're selecting the correct text field, in the quick type bar, so in the extra keyboard row, where usually autocorrect suggestions are placed, if you select like a phone number field, you will see right there a button above the keyboard that says phone from camera. And you tap that button and a camera UI comes up and it just filters for phone numbers. Right? So imagine you're making a reservation in an app that has done the proper work with the necessary markup for this stuff.
Right.
And you have, I don't know, like a flyer for a place you want to call. You point the camera at the flyer and there's a bunch of text, but the camera will only filter the phone number. And then if you select the address field and you point it to the same document, you don't have to select the correct line of text. The camera will know, I just need to focus on the street address.
Oh, that's really nice.
So that's really nice. And I think developers should take a look at this stuff to make sure that they're doing the proper markup for all these kinds of different text fields. Now, a couple of extra things I want to mention. Unfortunately, right now, because obviously I immediately thought of doing this, it seems that the take photo action of shortcuts does not support this stuff.
Okay.
It would have been, because I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could like have live text support in shortcuts so that I could do things like bring up the camera, recognize and copy some text, and pass it over to Obsidian or the share sheet or something similar. But it seems that the live text UI is not supported in shortcuts at the moment as of beta 1.
Okay.
And the second thing I want to mention is live text extraction is also supported everywhere in iOS 15 in the native quick look previews. So in any image that you open with a preview, so say in iMessage, somebody sends you a photo.
Yep.
And in the photo, there's some text. You open the photo and you see in the bottom right corner, the document scan button. You press it and all the recognized lines of text will be highlighted in the photo. And you can tap those and you can select them and you can copy them, translate them, the usual stuff. So that's what I really like about this feature is the fact that it starts from the camera, but it also works for photos, right? And obviously you can also use it in the Photos app, right? You can do obviously it goes without saying, you can open the Photos app and you see the same button.
Sure.
But it works in Quick Look and it works in third-party apps and it can be initiated from the keyboard. I think it's all really fascinating. And it's this combination of multiple frameworks, right? So the camera, autocorrect for the keyboard, the neural engine and machine learning,
all the
data
OCR
detectors,
stuff.
The OCR stuff with vision. It's all very fascinating to me how multiple frameworks can work together for something that is so simple when you think about it, right? You just point the camera at text and the camera says, I found some text, right? It seems trivial, but it's not.
Right.
And
yeah, no, we're really seeing Apple reaping the rewards of these incredibly powerful processors that are on these devices now, after years and years of developing this and then having these building blocks of APIs available that now can be snapped together in all sorts of new and different ways. And the processing is there to do it in basically real time, which is amazing. All right, Federico. Well, it's been a great week of WWDC discussions with you. It's been fun to chat. Yeah. We've talked more than we usually do during a week, but that's been fantastic. And I'm still, I'm kind of ending the week just as excited as I started. It's been a good WWDC. There's still a lot to learn, a lot to look at.
But are we ending the week?
Well, I don't know. Maybe
we'll see.
We might have something up our sleeves. Keep an eye out, I guess, on
Twitter,
social media. Yes,
on social media,
on
yes,
Twitter, social media in general. Because Federico and I are not only just on Twitter. I mean, Federico, he's at Vitici. That's VITICCI, right? But he's also on Instagram, and I'm the same way, and I'm at John Voorhees on both of those. And I should thank, before we go, our sponsor for this week, which is Raycast, because Raycast, they supported all the extra work we did this week, and I want to give them a big round of applause and a big thank you for doing that, because it's a lot of work, and it's a terrific app. You should check it out if you haven't before. I like it a lot. I've been using it. And, we'll be back soon. I'd say we're going to be back on Monday, but Federico and I have so many different little things going on right now.
We'll be back.
That I'm not sure
Let's
exactly
just say that we'll be back.
when we'll be back, but we'll be back before you know it, which I think is probably the most accurate thing I could possibly say. So I will talk to you soon, Federico.
Ciao, John.